This week, we are throwing cats in co-op, play as an alien botanist, and build settlements run almost entirely by rescued creatures. And those are just a few of today's stories. What do you do when you absolutely want to develop a creature collecting game but are just a little too afraid of Nintendo? That's right, no capturing, just purification and then turning into them. Now you're probably on a Nemo's radar instead. Well, I guess you can't win this one. In Neverwither, you explore a large fantasy continent that's being slowly poisoned by a corrupted world tree. And your job is not just to survive, but to clean it up, one creature at a time. But these creatures are not just companions that fight for you. They can gather resources, farm crops, or haul materials. Your tiny survival camp slowly grows into a living settlement run almost entirely by the creatures you rescued. And with way less animal cruelty than Palworld. By resonating with a companion, you can transform into it mid-fight or for exploration, letting you approach bosses and dangerous areas in very different ways. The world itself is fully open, with biomes ranging from frozen wastes to volcanic zones. Players can share bases and even tackle bosses together with their combined monster squads. There's even PvP with clans that fight over territory. Both large official servers and private worlds are planned, depending on how social or competitive you want things to be. Neverwither is set to launch sometime later this year, at least if no one accuses them of copyright infringement. We just love how gaming can combine themes that are absolutely polar opposites, like cozy and survival. Astro Botanica is one of these games that do exactly that. You play as an alien crashed on a prehistoric Earth. But it's not all that bad. And although you need special plants just to breathe, like trees and oxygen, the world around you is more cautious than actually harmful. Combat isn't the focus here. Instead, your survival depends on crafting, experimentation, and problem solving. The game treats the world more like a living laboratory than a hostile wasteland. Exploration takes you through different biomes spread across interconnected islands. And along the way, you interact with early humans, not through dialogue, but gestures, trading, and basic cooperation to slowly earn their trust. Base building exists, but on a smaller, calmer scale. You protect crops, manage resources, and slowly turn a crash site into a functional home with a disproportionately large garden for all your plants. Some for tonics, some for puzzles, and again, some to scare off wildlife. And while Astro Botanica is funded through Kickstarter, it's one of the few projects that still let non-backers play the game regardless. But wait, Lumi, this is a single-player game. That's right, but the game is heading to early access this February. And co-op for up to 4 players is on the top of their roadmap. So while this isn't one to jump into immediately for multiplayer, it might be worth revisiting later this year. We will keep you updated. Epitome is an upcoming free-to-play MMORPG that tries to do 2 very bold things at once. Run a truly massive online world and make that world react to what players actually do. Instead of splitting everyone into small copies of the same map, the developers are aiming for bigger instances that can hold tens of thousands of players at the same time. The last game with that level of ambition was Ashes of Creation. But while its developers spent over an hour explaining their own server meshing tech in a dedicated video, the studio behind Epitome simply says it relies on proprietary Unreal Engine 5 server technology. So we will have to wait and see how this turns out in a real-life setting. And while the setting doesn't exactly scream innovation, their idea for NPCs and companions certainly is on the more unique side, as one of the big features is the AI layer. NPCs are not locked into static dialogue trees. Instead, you can talk to them freely, argue, or ignore them, and they will remember. Quests are also generated based on your past actions instead of coming from a fixed list. So 2 players in the same town might get very different missions. Couple that with plans for AI-driven companions, and we start to question how much AI is too much. Sure, it might be fun to try derailing the NPCs into saying the wildest things, or get some strange mission instead of having to slay a pack of wolves for the 100th time. But behind most of these lies human creativity and real-world jobs. And Epitome is by no means the first game to implement AI, where Winsmead or Sword of Justice already adapted similar technology, while voices in Arc Raiders are AI voices based on voice actors. What do you think? Would you rather play a game like The Witcher, where every story is handcrafted and voice acted to perfection, but the replay value is lower? Or do you crave the uncertainty of language model-driven gameplay for novelty's sake? We ourselves prefer handcrafted settings, stories, and voice acting over AI-generated content by far. Nothing beats human wit, creativity, and passion for their craft, and this is nothing a machine can imitate anytime soon. That went a little off topic here, but we thought it's quite an interesting theme to talk about, especially if a game advertises AI as one of their biggest game features. And if you are still curious, Epitome is heading into a Kickstarter-backed pre-alpha this month and will be playable over Steam. If you take a look at how well videos about cats still perform these days, we're actively questioning why we didn't become cat tubers instead. All that's missing now is an actual cat. Or maybe Whisk will work in our favor instead. A game so heartwarmingly adorable, it immediately grabbed our attention. Whisk is a first-person co-op platformer for 2 players, where you and a friend dash through watercolor worlds to rescue dream cats. And because you two are obviously no firefighters, you put them into a glass ball and throw them like it's softball time in sports class. The goal is getting them safely into interdimensional portals. Each level is short, but you have to scout routes in advance, then time dashes and hand the cats back and forth mid-air. Similar to other 2-player experiences, there's no solo mode here. This is co-op or nothing. You have to talk, you have to trust each other, and when someone drops the cat, well, how could you? The whole thing is wrapped into this dreamy art style with some nice drum and bass soundtrack in the background. And if you're thinking, Lumi, those animations look a tiny bit choppy. Yeah, maybe you're right, but this little indie gem is being developed by mainly 4 people, including some who have worked on Valorant and Sky Children of the Light in the past. And they have teased a demo coming soon, with the full release later this year. Larian held a huge AMA on Reddit last week, and if that ever was in question for anyone, the new Divinity game will have co-op on release. They did not drop the final party size yet, but since they also confirmed modding, players will essentially be able to play with as many friends as they want to. Divinity Mega Server, here we come! Speaking of mods, someone asked in the AMA if the Big Naturals mod would become part of the base game. So, which one of you asked that? Oh, and because 1 or 2 people besides us also prefer human-made art over Gen AI, let us enjoy the fact that Sven Vinke confirmed that there will be none of that in the final game. The rest of the 4,000 plus comments was basically, as a TLDR, Divinity is gonna be awesome. If you were looking for an excuse to get back into the co-op FPS Deep Rock Galactic soon, you only have to wait a few more days, because Season 6, Relics of Hoxes, is going live on Steam on January 29th, and to consoles around 2 weeks later. Hoxes brings the new biome called Ossuary Depths, filled with new enemies, flying and not flying. You can hunt the new resource, Osmium, if you manage to catch the monsters hoarding it. And there's also a new extraction mission featuring a shiny lump of resin, lasers, and rockets. So just a normal day in the mines for a dwarf. Rock and stone. Grounded 2 is slowly moving along its early access roadmap and has now teased the first details for the winter update, which is now on the test servers and will soon be part of the live game. If you ask me, the single biggest highlight is Ladybug Buggies, which is how Grounded calls their insect mounts, closely followed by other adorable little critters like crickets and, not you, and fireflies. With new insects also come new craftable gear, as well as a new story chapter featuring a giant cobra in a new community garden biome. We also had some free games lined up for this week, but after some research, well, let's just say we value our audience way too much for this. So that means that's all for this week. We wish you an amazing time in co-op with your favorite people, and we'll see you again in the next one.